Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
And they're off.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
And you're very welcome along to this week's Friday Night Racing. We broadcast live every Friday afternoon on the OTB Sports app and on otbsports.com, and then every Friday evening we broadcast on Off the Ball on News Talk from 8 o'clock as well. So you can't miss us, and we're all over your social media channels as well, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter and Periscope as well. So no excuse to miss your Friday fix of racing. As ever, Johnny Ward is here. Johnny, how are you?
Not too bad. How are you, Joe?
I'm delighted to say our guest this week is Michael Moloney from the Galway Racecourse. Michael, good afternoon to you. How are you?
Good afternoon, gents. How are you?
We're pretty excited about the fact that you've got 7 full days of racing coming next week. A little bit unusual, a very unusual scenario for all of us. What's it actually been like for you getting ready for this? Yeah,
I suppose it's been a very, very strange, since we announced in April that we were going behind closed doors. It's been a very, very strange build-up for the last number of months in terms of, what we were going to do, how we were going to manage it. I suppose initially looking at, whether we could race for 7 days behind closed doors and how the track would work. So that's certainly been unusual. The last couple of weeks then, I suppose it's getting stranger as the weeks go on, because normally here from the end of June, beginning of July, people start to rack up on course every day. There's more and more people coming in terms of, marquees being built on site, course preparation, alcohol arriving, food arriving, there'll be lorry loads arriving in daily. So to look out into the parade ring at the moment, it's a very surreal sight to think that we're the Friday before the races, and there's very few people around the course at the moment.
And are you glass half full or glass half empty? Like a little bit kind of devastated by the fact that this is happening, or actually just a little bit thrilled that you're able to get anything out given the scenario that we've come through?
Look, yeah, I think we have to be thrilled that we're racing, for 7 days. I think there was touch and go at times as to whether we would be able to race at all, or that we would have any racing here. We've obviously been racing here since 1869. Going back, this will be the 151st race meeting. There's only, you walk into the weigh room here in Galway and you've got the list of all the winners from the Galway Plate for the last 150 years, and there's only one blank mark on the board, which was during the Irish Civil War in the 1920s. So I was very conscious, that we didn't want to see another blank space up there on that wall going forward. And, as you say, delighted to just have the opportunity to be able to put it on and make sure that we have that racing, because it's great racing at the end of the day, so it's something that we can really look forward to. And I think, everybody supports Galway, and, while they can't be here this year, there's still a lot to look forward to.
What's it like in terms of the expenditure or the money that you're going to lose out on, Michael? Because, when I'm thinking of Punchestown, the loss of that festival, and, a lot of racetracks during the summer, they wouldn't necessarily get major crowds, I suppose, the industry meetings and so forth, but Galway is massively well supported. And what does it mean to the racetrack to lose out on all that ticket income and all the other ancillary income?
As you can imagine, it's a huge blow to the financials of the racecourse. I suppose, really all racecourses in Ireland are certainly struggling. And I suppose, look, everybody is struggling a little bit right now to get back on their feet. But it's something that we had to do. I think, when Horse Racing Ireland got the opportunity to put racing back on board, all the racecourses were there willing to take fixtures and wanted to put racing back on. And, again, the race committee here, we've been racing for 150 years. So, they were very supportive of the fact that we needed to try and race this year and support the industry. We've had people bringing their horses here for many years and support us year in, year out with good quality horses to bring to the festival. And we wanted to put on that racing. But certainly from a financial point of view, it's a huge blow. You think of the corporate hospitality, we'd be feeding 1,500 corporate hospitality guests, 140,000 people of ticket sales right throughout the week. So it's a huge financial loss, and not really something that we're going to be able to maintain in the long run. I think while everybody is struggling in the racing industry, racecourses are certainly struggling, and certainly the bigger ones that have festival meetings and have big audiences from a public point of view. while people can maybe get through one festival behind closed doors, looking into what happens next year, it certainly wouldn't be a good scenario if we don't get racing back to be able to have public attend in the near future. And obviously the announcements that Champions Weekend is obviously behind closed doors in Listowel, it's just a worrying scenario. And we're looking at a 7-figure loss this year, which is not sustainable from any business. So it's something that hopefully Horse Racing Ireland will come to the table and recognise that, and be it that there's supports there for racecourses going forward to try and get us over this period, and hopefully look forward to having people back on site.
Yeah, I mean, at some point we're all going to have to decide as a society what our appetite for risk is, and we're probably not at that point yet where we're all comfortable having those conversations, but sooner rather than later there is probably going to be a conversation about, well, is it okay to go to sports events if we all wear masks, or what is the level of risk? And
I'm surprised now, to be honest, that Leopardstown, the Champion Stakes and all that has gone, because I think the trajectory we were on up until maybe 2 weeks ago was so positive, and I think we're just getting a bit spooked by what we're seeing in the news from a lot of cases worldwide. And I completely agree with you. Until there is a vaccine, we have to come to a point where, well, we have to get on with things as well, to an extent.
Good chance there isn't going to be a vaccine. That's the thing. So, like, if there's a good chance
it can't go on forever,
what are the alternatives? And I guess, Michael, it's important that we hear the voice of businesses like yours, where actually the stark reality of continuing as we are, it's just not really possible into the future.
No, it's certainly not. And as I say, the likes of Punchestown has already lost their festival. They didn't even get to run it behind closed doors. Obviously Leopardstown the same. If we get to a scenario at Christmas, that there still isn't crowds back racing, it's an issue. And even for Galway, a restricted crowd probably isn't going to get us over the line. We need to, and look, don't get me wrong, I very much appreciate where we are, and obviously the issue around the virus and the need to protect people at the moment. But I suppose and we've obviously complied with all the public health guidelines, and we'll continue to do that. But it's certainly a stark reality for us facing into another year of significant losses. It just means that racecourses aren't going to be able to sustain that, and we won't be here to provide racing next year unless it's something changes. And look, I suppose we just have to wait and see over the next couple of months as to where we go with that.
Obviously the Apple judgment and all that was quite significant, but when you're thinking of small businesses, when I was in Galway during the week for the launch of the weights, for I suppose argument's sake, and we'd Colin from Ladbrokes, and I was talking to him, and he was saying Ladbrokes, like, the shops are really struggling since lockdown, and despite the fact they've reopened, it's one, I suppose, because people have stopped going to them and they've gotten out of the habit. 2, because the social aspect of it is gone. 3, because elderly people probably don't really feel safe. But while I was waiting to go to the racetrack, I went to a local cafe, and the proprietor came over and he was emphasising how much these small businesses really, really need help. And going into Galway then, this massive racecourse, probably the nicest day since we had the heat wave, Michael, most gorgeous day, and it was like a tumbleweed. It was so eerie, and you do pine for those days where you hear the roar of the crowd in Galway. But in terms of what this means to Galway as a city as well, the loss of income is just absolutely catastrophic, really, for the money it brings in.
Yeah, it is. There's so many businesses that have a spin-off from the races, and obviously with so many people influxing to the west of Ireland for that week, and everybody's here to have a good time normally, and from hotels to restaurants to hairdressers, boutiques, taxi drivers, coffee shops. Everybody gets a little bit of a spin out of it, and they all look forward to it. Galway is very proud of being a festival city, and it's not just the races. There's so many festivals in Galway now, from the Arts Festival, the Film Festival, there's food festivals, and it really is a great place to go and spend some time. I think there's some talk that there's lots of people coming to Galway next week, but really on the ground that's not the case. Speaking to the hotels, they're struggling to sell rooms at the moment, so people are staying away from Galway. And in fairness, I suppose we've asked them to enjoy Galway races from at home this year, and that's probably the safest thing to do at the moment. But yeah, businesses in Galway are certainly struggling. right throughout the county as well, I'd imagine.
Just I suppose one positive, Ger, is the fact the League of Ireland hasn't come back until next week. Obviously, Gaelic Games is still very much up in the air. Rugby is kind of in a similar boat, and the quality of racing we've had since it resumed on the 8th of June has been absolutely fantastic. It's been like day in, day out, there's one meeting or two, and as much as prize money is down, the very fact that we have Galway to look forward to, and anyone who's been to Galway, it's not that much fun queuing to get out of it, so at least you don't have to do that, and you can enjoy it on TV, and there's going to be, the quality of the analysis on TV is excellent at the moment. We'll obviously be mentioned on Off the Ball as well, and the fact that they're racing, I think you have to be glass half full on it, considering where other sports are at the moment. And we have had, because we have an abridged season, we've had almost like top quality races every other day in Ireland.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's definitely the case. When you think about where we were in March, the possibility that we weren't going to have any sports at all in the country for the rest of the year. And I just think it is important, though, that the message gets out that we actually do need to start thinking about what life is going to look like in the future, and that the alternative is that it's a very different world.
Absolutely.
And, these businesses need our help to survive, and we need to start having those conversations about going about life in a safe way, and what does that safe way look like, and how quickly can we do that? Can you talk to us a little bit about growing up around the races, because this is obviously it's a family affair from your perspective. So as a kid, what are your recollections of race week and growing up and going out there and just being around that environment?
Yeah, I suppose, look, it's I'm in a very unique position, and very strange that I suppose I moved to Ballybrit from Limerick when I was 4 years of age, when my father took over the role here as manager, and we moved on to, there's a house here on the racecourse just behind the stands, so we moved into the stands. So I suppose my whole youth was literally growing up around Ballybrit. Come home from school, first thing we do is get on the bike to go down around the racecourse to see what happened every day. And during the summer, we really look forward to getting out and about around the racecourse. I think my first job here was probably when I was 10 or 11. They used to cut the parade ring, get a small few quid off my father every week for cutting the lawns. So we really grew up around it, watched it grow. The things like the Millennium Stand being built and the Clan Stand being built. There was so much activity, but there was always, such a buzz coming into the races. There was so much preparation going on, and it's evolved over time. It's just got bigger and bigger in terms of the amount of stuff that has to be brought in before a race meeting now, in terms of facilitating, I suppose, people's expectation and the experience that we give them. But it was always, something that we were really proud of growing up. That my father was managing it, and always looked forward to it. I suppose in the younger days, when I was 7 or 8, we'd just be getting ready for the races. Everything would be prepared, and my parents would put me into the car and ship me off to my grandmother's for the week. So that used to always be a little bit disappointing, but that's where I spent my festival weeks for a number of years, and probably didn't miss it too much. We were probably filled with Fanta and sweets, and that's how we passed race week. So but I suppose I was delighted then when John retired to get the opportunity. I was in the UK at the time in Plumpton Racecourse, and get the opportunity to come back to Galway. And I suppose this is heading into my 6th festival here now, and look, it's great. We love it. I love living here. I love the job. I love there's a fantastic team here. It's great to come into work every day, which is pretty much your hobby. And I suppose we finish one race week normally, and the whole year is about preparing for next year and getting the place ready, and how we can tweak things and make the experience better for everybody. And as Johnny mentioned, it's about the crowd that's in Ballybrit, and it's those. When you hear the horses coming around the home turn in a Galway plate or a Galway hurdle, and there's 30,000 people cheering them on, that's what we live for as a team, to watch that and watch the owners come back into their parade ring to have their winners. So it's a great thing to be part of. We have hundreds of staff just come back year in, year out. Unfortunately, many of them not here this year, but they all have regular jobs. They all have 1 week of the year booked off to come up here and help out and do their role. So it's something that everybody that's anyway involved with is very proud of.
It's a real, I know John B. Keane called it like a state of mind. Galway Races is a state of mind, but when you, just the way you're talking there, Michael, you can kind of remember, you have a first Galway memory or whatever. I remember, just as I was probably getting into racing beforehand, I remember meeting Daniel MacDonald from my off-the-ball colleague there, and he gave me a tip for Ansar to win either the hurdle or the plate. And that's gone back many years, but Galway is like this. It's way more than a race meeting. It's probably where a lot of couples met and ended up getting married. It's probably where you meet friends that you wouldn't have seen for 12 months previously. And racing is, I don't know what percentage it is of the 100, but it's probably quite small compared to the overall package. And there's just so many stories behind it down the years.
Oh yeah, and like I suppose since it's announced that we were going behind closed doors. We know lots of people come here every year, but I can't get over the amount of phone calls we've had from people saying they haven't missed one in 20 years or 26 years or 30 years or 40 years, and all looking to see was there any way that they could get in. That they don't want to miss a Galway. It's part of their life that they don't miss the festival. And as you say, there's so many stories about people who met here and ended up getting married or otherwise. And
I was going to say that, but I left that out.
So there's lots of stories. I suppose and I think that's the great thing for us. People come here together. And if you can get a group of people to go racing, I think that's that's the best thing about racing. It's such an enjoyable day out. From start to finish, it's such a length time, in terms of there's 4 or 5 hours of racing, there's activity beforehand, and then, from a big festival meeting, many people continue on late into the night, compared to other sports where you have maybe an hour and a half of activity. It is a real big day out, and, the social side of Galway is huge as well in terms of, best dressed lady competitions, and there's so much activity around that as well. So yeah, I think it's disappointing certainly this year to think that we're not going to have any of that, or people moving around the enclosure from bar to bar, bringing tips with them, and most of the owners obviously tipping their own horse. I think everybody wants to have a runner in Galway, so it's a hard place to get a tip for a horse because there's so many of them going around. But some people manage to find out the right one, and as you say, there's going to be 52 winners here next week, no matter what happens.
Our guest this week is Michael Moloney. You're watching Friday Night Racing. It is brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie or follow the new Twitter account @HRI Racing, and you can use the hashtag every racing moment. Michael, in our family it was always a big deal because my aunt was Dolores Gillen, who would have worked with your dad, I think, as secretary of the course for about 40 years. So we were always very aware of the rhythm of the whole thing, building up to it. And then when the festival was over, our family would decamp to Galway because they would go away for a couple of weeks and we would take their house. So I always looked very much forward to the week afterwards and hearing the stories. And there were a couple of years where we would have got over and their whole family would have just gone out and worked like that. So it's very much part of the rhythm of life of anybody from the city and from the county in particular. And the other thing that really strikes me listening to you is that it's a massive, massive undertaking to get everything ready for this 1 week. And then the week after, it's like, whew, we go again.
Yeah, it does be a bit like that. I normally coming into from, I suppose, the second, third week of June, or even the last week of June, I would have no idea normally what's happening in the news. I'm just, there's so much happening on site here. So I was sitting down one day there in second, third week of July this year, and I was reading the news. I was thinking, I've never read the news in July before, my whole life. So it was a very strange feeling to have time to be able to sit down and read the news. But it is like that, it's full on. Where everybody here is probably working 7 days a week in the lead up to it, and then you have the 7 days of racing, and nothing's ever a problem though to the team, whether there's can be so much rail movement right throughout the week in terms of providing fresh ground every day. Like last year we were watering every night, so there was guys here till 3 o'clock in the morning, and a new team coming in at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So and that's right throughout the week. But as I say, everybody is happy to be involved. It's what they live for, so it works well.
And did you enjoy any of the festivals that you've been in charge of just yet, or is it actually only the relief that everything goes off well at the end of the week? You're like, okay, grand. Or when the first race goes to post and the cheer goes up, are you like, largely everything is going grand, I can actually enjoy a little bit of this now?
Yeah, no, look, it's why we do the job. It's to be here to enjoy that. So I think you can't but enjoy it. In fairness, I have very little to do during race week. There's so many people that they pretty much do the work. So it's only if something goes wrong, and usually someone has it sorted out before I even hear about it. So it's certainly the most enjoyable week from us. You're getting to walk back into the parade ring and meet someone that's just had a winner in Galway, and they couldn't be happier. So really, I think that the whole industry is supportive. There's obviously going to be days that the ground doesn't suit someone, or it just hasn't worked out, and they're obviously disappointed, and they mightn't be afraid to tell me that. But look, you take that too. We try and provide the best ground possible for everybody. But yeah, everybody's here to have a good time. They're all in a good mood. If the weather is anyway sunny at all, it's certainly always a positive atmosphere.
Galway's the best place in the world when the weather's good. As rare as that is, but when the weather's good, it's one of the best places in the world. Are you obviously a very keen student of other festivals around the world? Are there ideas that you've specifically brought from other places and gone, this is going to work here, or are there other ideas that you've seen other people take off you guys? What is that kind of exchange like?
Yeah, look, I think of any festival or any event, I think you have to do that. So we're constantly watching other events, not just racing. American football. Sinead Cassidy here, our marketing manager, spends most of her time during the winter researching what's happening in every other event that's going on around the world, and she arrives with a list of probably 150 things that we should do next year, and we'll probably pick out the best 10 or 20 and try and run with those. But yeah, I think it is about improving, isn't it? And it's about seeing what you can do a little bit different, and if you can find something that no one has done before, that makes it a little bit better. And that's why we sit down normally in August to start planning and seeing where we can come up with something that's different and unique. And I suppose before all this, we were very much everybody's. What everybody wanted on the day was, a unique experience, and that's what attracts people to an event, and that's what we were trying to create. And I think the racing is a great part of that, and there's so much activity in that, and yeah, I think it works well. But yeah, certainly something we follow. Yeah,
one last thing for me on that. The other aspect of this is that sometimes you have to be very brave and not do stuff just for the sake of doing new stuff. It's like we have a certain magic here, and we can't tamper with that too much because it might just disappear. I know it won't, but there's definitely been other things around the world where they're constantly trying to make it bigger and better, and let's just make it more. And actually sometimes
it's like the old-fashioned pub that they do up and it's not the same again. Like Galway has that magic that you don't need to change.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I think there is, but I think there's plenty of things that we've done that will come out of a festival that we're never doing that again. And I think you have to try. And I think if while it may feel like something isn't changing, I think if we're not in the background tweaking something, it'll become very old very quickly. And we are, I suppose, competition now for racing. It's not easy to get people racing anymore. It's hard to attract people to the race course, and we're not just competing with other sporting events now. I think even a family going out for dinner is obviously, I feel, is huge competition to getting a family to come racing. So yeah, it's hard to do that. That was one of the big things that we were looking at for this year. Obviously, unfortunately, we didn't get the go ahead, but it was to, I suppose, how we could be more family friendly in terms of attracting the younger audience to the race course. At the end of the day, they're the supporters of the future, and it's something that we want to try and harness, and we want to try and get those young people involved in racing and get them to the track and get them to enjoy it. We run those school days where we bring 100, 150 kids on site on a I suppose, the behind the scenes tour on a non-race day. And it's amazing to see even local kids who've never been to the race course before. But their eyes light up when they get to meet one of the horses that we'll have on site, or they get to run out of the starting stalls. And I think it's a good time to try and get people interested in the sport, and I think we certainly need that for the future.
I think as well, something that Galway deserves credit for is the fact that Galway and Goodwood are obviously on the same weekend. When I was getting into racing, you couldn't compare Galway and Goodwood, but the gap has actually gotten a lot narrower over the years, Michael. I mean, if you look at not only the standard of like for summer jumps racing, and that's obviously what it is, summer jumps racing, July into August, seriously good horses running in the good races. And not only that, then, the maiden, the 2-year-old maiden that Aidan O'Brien, that Dermot Well used to farm, the quality that has attracted. And all of a sudden, Galway's gone from this kind of, decent festival, summer festival, having a bit of crack, to a really serious target for essentially every trainer in the country. So Aidan O'Brien will be targeting races. Willie Mullins, has really done well in Galway the last few years. And it's become a seriously top-class event. Is that something that you've noticed, like, over the last maybe 10 or 20 years, maybe it's prize money or whatever, but the standard has taken it to another level altogether?
Yeah, look, I think certainly you mentioned prize money, and I think that's probably the biggest driver. And we were fortunate to have a huge level of prize money. I think we were at 2.3 million last year or something like that. So it's gigantic, and I suppose people have to take note of that. And that's maybe where the quality horses are coming out of. Last year we were looking at a €300,000 Galway Plate and Galway Hurdle, which is massive in terms of comparing it to other races that are around the country. So
the Galway Hurdle is the most expensive handicap hurdle in Europe, am I right?
Well, certainly in Ireland. I don't know about Europe, but yeah, it was.
So it is anyway.
It was certainly up there, so that's certainly.
I think it was. Now I may be wrong, but I think it certainly was anyway.
As you say, we'll run with it. But also, the ground then as well. I think in fairness, the ground has improved here as well in terms of the drainage that's been put into the course, and the water system obviously, and we can provide a pretty good surface for the 7 days. So I think the combination of those two is certainly attracting a better quality horse. You see the Galway Plate this year. Probably the highest rated horses that have been in it for a long time, entered in it anyway. And the Galway Hurdle looks, a really good race this year, very competitive, and you see the likes of, Alpine Star, coming out of Galway last year. It's great to see that, and it's great to know, for the racing punter that's coming to Galway, that they're, getting to see some really good horses, and that there's, horses here that are coming with a bit of potential for the future. So yeah, I think Jerry Broderick and his team, they do a fantastic job, and Larkin or Clark of the course as well. It's it's a team effort out there as well to have the best ground, and I think all that feeds into having it as a really good festival. And if you say it matches Goodwood, I'll take that.
it is that thing as well of the guaranteed norms kind of perhaps changing, in that Dermot Well farming that maiden, not only will he almost certainly have a hot pot for maidens to deal with this season. Joseph O'Brien might have a horse in it that's very good. Dunica has a serious 2-year-old running the other day. Ger Lyons is kind of beaten all before him. You mentioned Jesse with Alpine Star, and all of a sudden, like, Galway's running a 2-year-old maiden at a summer track in the west of Ireland that effectively is a group race.
Yeah, and isn't that incredible? Even in terms of ground, west of Ireland. In terms of the weather that we get out here, normally, you go back years and years and ground was probably always on the soft side. So it's a hugely competitive, week now in terms of, as you mentioned, Aidan and Joseph targeting Galway, Jesse, everybody is, it's something before where maybe trainers maybe swerved a little bit, or, mightn't have sent as many horses here, but I suppose everybody's keen to get a run, and they have to take the opportunity while it's there. And if the prize money is good, it certainly helps.
And it's no harm if that becomes a habit as well, from everybody's perspective. There was one other thing I wanted to ask you about. Just obviously, every sport in the world is trying to engage their fans at home in a new way. We've seen crowd noise in football, and it's going to be very interesting to see what the NBA end up doing. What are you guys doing? I know there's some kind of connection where you're actually making phone calls to people. What's the story behind that?
Yeah, I think that's again an idea that Sinead Cassidy here came up with, and the team in the office. And I suppose we were very conscious when we sat down a couple of months ago. There was so many people, that hadn't been out, hadn't got to meet people. Everybody was stuck at home, and the fact that we had so many phone calls from supporters, and I suppose we decided that we'd run the opportunity of offering people the opportunity to nominate someone to receive a phone call from one of the stars of racing at Galway, and that's what we proceeded to do. And we had people nominate people to receive phone calls from the likes of Davy Russell, Noel Meade, Gordon Elliott, and it's been unbelievable how well it's been received. And I think some of the phone calls have been quite funny, and I think it's amazing to see how people appreciate getting that phone call. That someone like Noel Meade has taken the time to pick up the phone and ring a long-time supporter of racing, and I think it's certainly been positive for the sport, and the reaction on social media has been huge. But right throughout the week, I suppose we're focusing on trying to give people information. We've lots going on. Obviously, RTE will be covering the week, and I think it's probably a good place to see it. We'll have racing TV. We're working with Galway Bay FM. They'll be covering all 52 races right throughout the week of Galway. And our own social channels, we're trying to offer some behind the scenes content in terms of delivering that to people. We're conscious people who are going to be watching at home. They might want to have a bet. There's some people, Galway people recognize it a little bit like Christmas, and it might be the only week of the year that they have a bet. So everybody wants to know what's happening. They want to know the winners, and they want to know the form, and we're going to try and facilitate that as best we can through our social channels.
We were there last year for the injured jockeys, and actually I think we might have made more money in that one afternoon, Johnny, than you made all year with your tips from here. That's not a very you're not taking that very well, Johnny. Your face got very serious there. We were zorbing. We were one of the pre-race. It was Aidan O'Mahony, myself, John Duggan, Owen Sheehan, and Ollie Canning.
Oh yeah, I do remember that now.
Yeah, and
were you in the?
We were in the Zorb. Yeah, my neck is still sore.
Doesn't look enjoyable.
It's fine if you're a specific height, and Owen is just the right size where he could actually just stand up and run. And Ollie Canning's super competitive, so there was the stewards' inquiry in the end. I think actually Owen won on countback. So
what was your point anyway?
Nothing. It was just a cheap opportunity to have a dig at you and how much money you've made for the Injured Jockeys Fund. But we're going to miss it, and that was the other thing. It was really noticeable again, like just in the taxi on the way back into town from it, everybody was listening to Galway Bay. So it takes over the whole city, and it's good to know that it's still going to take over the whole city, and that it's going to be a different experience for everybody. But actually, we all have to suck it up a little bit and get ready and enjoy it as much as we can, and then hopefully plan for next year to be as normal as possible.
Well, everyone is there in a way. It's just that they're not at the track. And like I was saying during the week, you're not going to be getting the tip in the taxi now to the racecourse. You're going to be getting the tip probably on your WhatsApp or whatever. And like WhatsApp will probably have never seen the likes of it next week, because people aren't inclined maybe at the races to be on their phone as much. Everyone's going to be at home watching on TV or whatever, and Galway is some place for getting tips. I mean,
yes.
You get 10 tips in a race or a job with 11 runners. Like, so it's kind of, it's just going to be, I guess, Michael, it's trying to create Galway remotely as best one can.
Yeah, it is. Again, I'd never see the city during race week. Because we're normally, we're here from 7 to 7 or 7 to 12. But I think, this year, I suppose race week is probably going to take place a little more in the city, and as you say, a little more probably on the phone, which whether that's a good thing or not. But I think, everyone's still going to want to share their tip. Everyone's, going to be ringing someone to see that they have a winner or loser, or are they up or are they down. I think there'll still be plenty of activity. Galway people are still very interested in it, and they'll be keeping a keen eye on it this week. And I suppose, as you say, people won't be able to be at the track, but they'll certainly try and pick it up where and when they can. Well,
listen, it is always really difficult to keep the show on the road when circumstances go against you. You've done an amazing job to get it ready to the point where we are going to have 7 days of racing in Galway. So congratulations on getting this far, and enjoy the rest of it, and whatever downtime you get after that as well. Michael, great to have you with us.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, guys.
Michael.
It's Michael Moloney there, obviously CEO of Galway Racecourse, and in charge of Galway Races next week. I'm sure everybody's a little bit sad that this amazing thing that happens where the city is on fire for the whole week and it's just great crack is gone. But sometimes maybe we all need to remind ourselves that this was an amazing thing and we took it for granted a little bit, and now next year hopefully it's going to be absolutely sensational.
There is a slight concern as well about just people going to Galway next week in terms of potential big gatherings in the city. I think people do need to be wary of that. This thing is still very much there, and everyone will have, like so many people will have a habit of always being at Galway or taking their holidays that week and feeling the need to kind of socialise. But I think there is that slight need to emphasise that we need you still need to social distance and all that, because I don't know what Galway's going to be like next week. It's going to be very, very strange. The city, I mean, anyone who's been there during race week, it's an experience.
Class,
It's unbelievable. I mean, it wouldn't be everyone's cup of tea, but the older you get, maybe the harder it is to be there for the 7 days. But just the people you meet, I mean, it's just, there's nothing like it. It's as John B. Keane said, it is a state of mind.
Yeah, Hunter S. Thompson's The Kentucky Derby is decadent.
Wouldn't be far off that, except you wouldn't have a spray of mace like to get people out of your way, but yeah.
Friday Night Racing brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Now let's talk about racing this weekend. So our second place streak continued when Wembley finished runner-up last week.
Yeah, that was very disappointing. It was backed into 4-9, beaten by a horse that was well behind it on debut.
Right.
So it's one of those runs, couldn't, like it was back from even money into 4-9 and was second, but didn't have any excuses on the day. So LeBurnham, my tip in the Oaks, came fourth as well behind Even So, who actually just beat her at Naas. So that was, in fairness, an unbelievable result for Ger Lyons. Like 2 classic wins in the space of a month or whatever, and he's never had one before. It's astonishing so far.
Yeah, so he's obviously had a great lockdown. The Tote Irish Injured Jockeys Fund sits on €1,540. Is it time for an each way bet with this week's €100 tote stake? That's what the question asked here, and the script is.
Should we go each way or win? I think we'll go win. Horse in Tremor, trained in Sligo by Mark McNiff. I've looked at, I actually think there are lots of bets tomorrow. The Curragh on Sunday is a little bit more difficult, but tomorrow my tip is called Gone Racing, actually, in the 6:45. This is a truly weak race, and Mark McNiff, this horse ran a lovely race at Kilbeggan, has to have a massive chance. It's one of the quieter races of the day, but we've obviously the King George tomorrow.
We'll talk about that in a minute. Next Wednesday, obviously, sees the highlight of the Summer Jumps racing, the Tote Galway Plate at the Galway Festival. Tote customers can follow all of the Galway Races action on the tote.com and enjoy tips, expert blogs and special promotions as well. So your tip is called Gone Racing?
Gone Racing in Tremor, yeah.
Tremor, what time?
6:45.
6:45. And what kind of price do you expect it to be?
I hope it'll be around 5-2, 3-1. I said Wembley might be 2-1. That was a bit ambitious, but yeah, this horse just found. There's been so many races on recently. A lot of them aren't of the highest standards, to put it euphemistically, and this would fall into that bracket. But Mark McNiff be one of those trainers like in racing backwater in Sligo that does really well. I'm not necessarily saying he'd target Galway, but he would definitely target those western tracks, and the fact that he's sending a horse to Tremor with his horses in great nick. This horse was pulled out during the week in Ballinrobe because of the ground, I'd imagine. Massive chance.
All right, we'll obviously have a look back at the Galway Plate and the Galway Hurdle on next Friday's Friday Night Racing. But so the big race in Cross Channel tomorrow. Yeah,
so we've the King George at Ascot, and Magical looked like she was going to take on Enable. Always beats her, literally has never been beaten by her. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your viewpoint, she went to the Curragh instead. So we have Japan and Sovereign among the 3 Aidan O'Brien horses taking on Enable, and I'm really intrigued by this. As much as she's 4-7 or whatever, she should win. She's lost her last 2 races, which I forgive her for in a heartbeat. But just the fact that it's William Buick, Ryan Moore, and the other jockeys actually escape me now. But the 3 riders, 2 of whom don't normally really ride for Ballydoyle, but with the COVID and Ger Lyons is sending over Siskin to Goodwood, and Colin Keane has gone over and effectively forfeiting 2 weeks of riding over here because of the rules. But Aidan doesn't have his home-based jockeys, so they're kind of going to play the man and the ball in a way, in that we're going to try to beat Enable, and that'll make sure we win the race. Oisin Murphy's the other, sorry. So I don't really see how they're going to beat her, but what they come up with is going to be intriguing. It's even been put to me that the 3 of them will take a pull and let her stride on and take the lead. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but if it does, but you can imagine there's going to be a serious conflict, because this is effectively, if Enable runs to her peak performance, she will win, because there's just no real feasible way that the others can improve beyond her. But she's lost her last 2 races, and maybe they'll think there's some chink.
So why did she lose the last 2 races?
She lost in the arc probably because of the ground. I mean, that was a bit of a strange result, but the ground got quite testing. On her return, the clips, I think she needed to run a bit. It was over 1.2 miles. Lost to a seriously good horse who was optimally ridden. I don't think she lost anything but the race, to be honest. And for me, her enthusiasm is there. I think Japan, he's a very good horse. He won the Judgmont last year, but he's beatable.
Okay, so Japan hasn't won this season.
No, it was a reasonable comeback run the last day. I imagine this has been his sort of target for the season. King George is for older horses. Aidan has an awful lot of 3-year-olds for this bracket. Wouldn't have an awful lot of 4-year-olds, and Magical to be able... It's not ideal that the Tattersalls Gold Cup and the King George are the same weekend. They're effectively the same race over a slightly different distance. But Magical in this race against Enable, 2 fillies as well, would make it, you know, the chat of the entire kind of almost the summer in terms of what a race this could be, because Magical was unbelievable the last day. But, you know, she should probably pick up the Tattersalls Gold Cup instead. OK, and who's the main threat in the Tattersalls? She doesn't have any threat, really. She's running against enigmatic Sir Dragonet, who would finish second to himself and probably will do that. He could well finish second to her. That's, if you're having a bet in the race, do your little forecast exacta, because I think he's every chance chasing her home, but he won't beat her. But it's great to have these horses in training. They could be sent on, and because they're mares, they can only have 1 baby a year. If they were colt, they could have 200. So that's how it works. The Tote Exacta would have been my first ever bets at the Curragh, and also did it win?
Yes.
What a terrible.
I know. But as a result, I've always loved that little bet. Type of thing. I was like, should I just do? And I'm looking at. I mean, I realise this is not a good tip, so please, other people don't take this. But should I not just back Enable to beat Japan?
Yeah, like
as a 1-2.
Yeah, I'd say that's. When I'm talking about Ballydoyle trying to get Enable beat, they will know that Japan is their best hope. So without trying to say necessarily they're going to be involving rampant team tactics, I imagine the race will be run to suit Japan, who's their best horse in the race. And yeah, him finishing second, the odds won't be great, but they'll still be odds against or thereabouts. And the one with Sir Dragon coming second to Magical will actually pay quite well if that happens.
Okay, so there are a few opportunities for us there, but you are refusing to go each way, and we're going on the nose.
It's probably too short anyway, but yeah, like it has a great chance. It's a really, really weak race.
All right, Johnny, enjoy your weekend. Thanks very much. That's another Friday Night Racing in the books for you. The best place to watch us is on the new OTB Sports app. You can get that in the App Store. Friday Night Racing and Off the Ball is brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie. We'll see you next Friday afternoon. Obviously, we'll be talking about the Galway Races all week next week on all of our channels, on OTB AM every weekday morning, and of course on Off the Ball every evening from 7 o'clock to 10. Take care.
Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.